Coming up next is a song with a secret message that never would have gotten airplay if the music industry knew what the hell the Squeaky Clean band was putting out, what they were saying. And though it seems pretty obvious in hindsight, not everybody got what today's song was really about. The song's controversial message, it was camouflaged by a jangly upbeat sound and performed by a band that had been manufactured in a lab. This band, they didn't write any of their own music, at least not at first. Later, though, they would fight the power for a chance to write and record their own music. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a protest song disguised as a happy-go-lucky sing-along that came to be because this writer heard a Beatles song and misheard the lyric of the Beatles song. When he figured out he'd been singing the wrong thing, he turned the misheard lyric into a #1 smash, and coming up in an in-depth interview with him, he'll tell you the story. You're not going to want to miss this one. It's really funny on a song we all know and love. Next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember watching the Dukes of Hazzard growing up, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the big red button and click the bell, the notification bell, so you can always know when our latest interviews and our videos and features come out. You can also check us out on Patreon below. That keeps it a daily channel, and our merch. Sport a Professor Rock t-shirt if you choose. So I'm excited to return to another one of my favorite shows that we do on this channel. We call it Breakthrough. It's a show where we break down songs, albums, or events that kicked open the door to an artist or band's career and gave them that momentum to rocket to long-term success. On today's episode, we're featuring a smash hit that was inspired by a misheard lyric of another song by a band that was put together by Hollywood to cash in on the Beatles' popularity. The so-called Fabricated Four. Yeah, I'm talking about the Monkees from their 1966 self-titled debut record, It's the Last Train to Clarksville.
Take the last train to Clarksville and I'll meet you at the station.
The Monkees were formed after a casting call went out in September of 1965 in Daily Variety and The Hollywood Reporter looking for folk and roll musicians, singers for acting roles in a new TV series. The parts were specifically for 4 insane boys aged 17 to 21, that's what it said. The cattle call of young actors and musicians totaled over 400 people who auditioned, including some other names that would later become very iconic, including Stephen Stills, David Crosby, Harry Nilsson, Paul Williams, and Danny Hutton from Three Dog Night. There was also a rumor that Charles Manson tried out, but that turned out to be false. In the end, of course, the finalists were Michael Nesmith, Peter Tork, Davy Jones, and Mickey Dolenz. They were chosen from a stack of 437 applicants to appear on the 1966 sitcom, The Monkees. The show, of course taking its cue from the Beatles' zany movie A Hard Day's Night, was about a fictional band, and it featured plenty of hijinks and musical performances, adventures, if you will.
Like a dog, it's been a hard day's night.
However, the members of the Monkees were chosen more for their acting abilities rather than any proven musical talent. Although to their credit, both Peter Tork and Michael Nesmith were already both musicians going in. Screen Gems, the Columbia Pictures production company that shot the series, owned a record label called Cold Gems. Publisher Don Kirshner was tasked with finding songs for the Monkees to record. So to accomplish this, Kirshner turned to his extensive roster of songwriters. And he had a lot of big names at his disposal. There was Neil Diamond, there was Neil Sedaka, Jerry Goffin, Carole King, Barry Mann, Cynthia Weil, David Gates, and Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart. They wrote the theme song for the series, amongst other Monkees hits. But that didn't mean that the Monkees were getting off easy. Now, for their part, Michael, Peter, Mickey, and Davy, they spent 12 hours a day on Columbia Soundstage filming the series, which left little time for the guys to record the music, let alone write it. In addition to hiring songwriters, their production company also employed studio musicians to lay the tracks down for the Monkees. There was Glenn Campbell, Leon Russell, Hal Blaine, and Louis Shelton. Sessions were completed by Boyce and Hart and their backing band, the Candy Store Prophets. That meant that at the start of their career, all the Monkees had to do with their songs was overdub the vocals and just perform them. The first episode of The Monkees was aired on NBC on September 12, 1966. And despite low ratings at the outset, the show quickly became very popular with the younger generation. And helping kick off the Monkey Mania phenomenon was the band's debut single, Last Train to Clarksville. This was huge for them.
You can be here by 4:30, 'cause I've made your reservation.
Last Train to Clarksville was written by Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart. Actually, Bobby Hart got the idea for the lyrics from mishearing some words from the Fab Four themselves. He turned on the radio and he heard the end of the Beatles' #1 hit, Paperback Writer. Now, for some reason, Bobby thought that Paul McCartney was singing Take the Last Train. I'll let him tell you the rest in the interview that we have with him later in this episode. But Hart knew that the Monkees TV series had been envisioned as a nod to the Beatles, so he knew that emulating the Fab Four was going to be a really good idea. To do this, Hart inserted a distinctive guitar riff into Last Train to Clarksville. And he wrote in the "Oh no no no, oh no no no," that was a lyric in a response to the Beatles' famous "Yeah yeah yeah." And of course, Last Train to Clarksville was very upbeat in nature. The song's jangly sound was actually designed to camouflage a strong anti-war message. Bobby Hart knew it would be too controversial if he attracted too much attention to it. He would say, and I quote, "We couldn't be too direct with the Monkees. We couldn't really make a protest song out of it, so we kind of snuck it in." In particular, Boyce and Hart have their sights set on protesting the Vietnam War in this song. They snuck it in. Last Train is about a guy who's drafted to fight in the war. The train is taking him to an army base, and he knows he may die in Vietnam.
And I don't know if I'm ever coming home.
Mickey, who sang lead on the song, said, and I quote, "Frankly, it's an anti-war song. He's obviously been drafted, and he says to his girlfriend, 'I don't know if I'm ever coming home.' Considering that it was a Monkees song, and the very first one, I was always surprised that the record company even released it, unless it just went right over their head." Which in hindsight, I think that it did. A lot of people don't know that. They're like, that's what the song's about?
Together till the morning brings my train and I must go.
But where is Clarksville? According to Bobby Hart, he and Tommy Boyce were actually just trying to figure out a name that would sound good for the song. He would say there was a little town in northern Arizona, they used to drive through, called Clarksdale, and when they were going over potential names, Hart suggested Clarksdale, but the name didn't quite flow right, so the songwriters changed it to Clarksville. It's actually perfect for the song's story because even though they didn't know it at the time, there's an Air Force base near the town of Clarksville, Tennessee. Crazy, right? I've actually been there. But just in case you were wondering, you can also find Clarksville in a lot of states in the United States. There's California, there's Clarksville, Texas, Florida, Illinois, New York, and Maryland. Actually counted more than 20 Clarksvilles in the U.S. alone. And like I said, some of those are within striking distances of U.S. military installations. So it's possible Last Train to Clarksville could work for other locations as well. But I think Tennessee, has gotten top billing because it's where Fort Campbell is.
Take the last train to Clarksville, I'll be waiting at the station.
Now, according to the liner notes on the 1994 reissue of the album, members of the Candy Store Prophets did the instrumental backing on this track. It happened on July 25th, 1966 at RCA Victor Studios in Hollywood. In fact, Mickey Dolenz was the only Monkee featured on Last Train to Clarksville. A lot of people don't know that either. Talking about some of the vocal elements, Mickey explained that he was practically working 24/7. After 10 plus hours filming the TV series each day, he would head over to the recording studio and he'd often record 2 or 3 lead vocals a night. For Dolenz, it was all kind of a blur, but he does remember Hart telling him that for Last Train, the two were in the studio around midnight and Mickey was completely burned out. He was just overworked. Somehow he managed to lay down the vocals for the track. However, when he got to the bridge, he was just spent. And he told Bobby he couldn't figure out how to sing the words properly. So Bobby told him just go da 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 da. And you know what? It worked. So I had the chance to sit down with Bobby Hart, legendary guy, get more of the story behind the song. Here's what he told me.
Cause I've made your reservation, don't be slow.
When we wrote Clarksville for the first single, we wanted to add our little 2 cents to the growing unrest with the Vietnam War.
Yep.
And it was just heating up at that point, and the riots were starting, and there was a whole cultural revolution going on just at that point. So we just made a song about a fella going off to war, not knowing if he'd ever come back, and wanting one last night with his sweetheart.
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was where I was going to go next, is Last Train to Clarksville. And, people don't, if they go back and read the lyrics and really listen, that's exactly what it's about.
When we decided to use the Candy Store Prophets in the studio for Monkees productions,
Yeah.
we added 2 other guitar players that we had been using in demos before that. And one was Wayne Irwin, who could do the feedback guitar stuff, the psychedelic, and the other one was Louis Sheldon, who was just this terrific, gifted guitar player. We'd go in this little rehearsal studio and work out the arrangements. So we taught the song to the guys. They sounded really good, and he said, we told them, now we need an intro lick, and something Beatlesque maybe. And Louis just stood up and played it. How about this one? Dun, 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 dun. So yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. And also the fact that the no, 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 no was kind of a response to yeah. It sits right next to, like I Feel Fine and Day Tripper is that the second that you hear it, you know what it is,
And Louis also played the flamenco stuff on Valerie. So that's how versatile he was.
And the song, of course, went to #1 and still played. I mean, you can't turn on a radio station anywhere in America without still hearing it.
Yeah.
It's really, it's really had that staying power. I heard somewhere or saw it somewhere that, Paperback Writer was an influence also.
Well, it was a mistake. I was pulling into my parking, to my carport one night, and I was flipping through the radio presets, and I heard just the tail end of Paperback Writer.
Mm-hmm.
It had just come out. And I didn't hear the song, I just heard Paperback, and I thought he was saying, take the last, just in my head, that's what, So next day I heard the whole song and realized it wasn't about taking a train to anywhere, and anything to anywhere. But I told Tommy about the title, and he said, yeah, it's a good title, we need another song for the album. So we sat down and throwing Train to Where, and Tommy said, well, what are some of those little towns you used to go to in northern Arizona as a kid for vacation? And I said, well, Cottonwood, Jerome, Clarkdale. I said, oh, Clarkdale, maybe.
Yep.
So how about Clarksville? So I saw a newspaper article once after the song was out saying that something like 27 Clarksvilles in the U.S.
Yeah.
But the one I was identified with is the one was an Army base right outside of
Tennessee.
Nashville.
Yeah. The newer generation not only has found it through watching, Monkees and everything like that, but and then the Four Tops, of course.
I know that one.
When that came out, what did you think about that?
Well, we were just so thrilled. I loved the Four Tops. When I was playing at the Thunderbird Hotel with Teddy Randazzo, we would alternate sets with a 1940s singer whose name I can't remember right now, but his background singers, just before they had any hits, background singers were the Four Tops.
Wow.
So I lived next door to them in the motel, got to know them before they had hits.
That must have been an honor.
So diverse, and there was this preeminent bluegrass group called Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, and they recorded it.
Take the last train to Clarksville and I'll meet you at the station.
Yeah.
I don't know why these people did.
And George Benson.
Yeah, that's right.
That was
a
really
good
cool.
one with his octave solos. And
how much great music came out in that 1 year. I mean, it would have been a miracle for that to come out in a 50-year period.
True.
But for it to come out in 1 year.
It's true. I remember picking up, I have a tear sheet out of a Billboard Top 100 from maybe it was 66. And you look at the top 10, and 8 out of those top 10 people know those songs today.
They're some of the greatest songs of all time.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen if you looked at today's top 10.
No. So Last Train to Clarksville was the Monkees' first single. It was released on August 16, 1966. It was 3 weeks before the series debuted on NBC, and it made its first appearance on the Hot 100 the same week that the series premiered. They were pushing it on the radio back then, the push for the TV show. The show's instant popularity with America's youth pushed Last Train to Clarksville straight up the Billboard charts. It peaked at number 1 on November 5th, and in the process, it knocked off 96 Tears by Question Mark and the Mysterians.
96 Tears.
Last Train to Clarksville also did well internationally. It reached number 23 in the UK, number 16 in South Africa, number 14 in Australia, number 10 in Finland, number 6 in New Zealand, number 5 in Ireland, and it went all the way to number 1 in Canada. In terms of pop culture media, Last Train to Clarksville has appeared in several movies and TV shows over the years. There was After Hours in 1985, Crime Story in 1987, Very Brady sequel in 1996. After getting off to such a successful beginning, the first hit going to number 1, the Monkees would score a lot more, including 6 top 5 singles, including the number 1 hits I'm a Believer and Daydream Believer. They were believers. The Monkees would also release 4 straight number 1 albums and grab a number 3 spot as well. Still, the band took a lot of heat when it was discovered that they weren't playing on their songs. As Mickey Dolenz explained, and I quote, "I think there was a lot of resentment in the recording industry that we'd come out of nowhere, left field and sort of just shot right to the top without having to kind of go through the ropes. The fact that Screen Gems had tried to keep the Monkees' musical non-involvement a secret led to a full-on controversy in the media. And there was behind-the-scenes turmoil as well. Nesmith and Torque, the Monkees' 2 actual musicians, were infuriated that they weren't being given a chance to play. They knew they could do it. Now, eventually, they would win their chance to write their own songs and to play their own instruments in the studio, record their own stuff. If you're actually interested in that story, we covered it on a previous episode when I covered I'm a Believer, the story behind that song. I'll link to it below. Still, the Monkees would soon face a series of setbacks. Their show was canceled in 1968, just 2 seasons. Their chart success dried up, and their popularity eventually faded. As a result, band members began leaving the group. The Monkees held their last recording session in 1970 before calling it quits. But fast forward to good old 1986, and a renewed interest in the Monkees led to a 20th anniversary reunion. With that, a return to the Billboard Top 20 with the single That Was Then, This Is Now. And of course, reruns of the famous show. That was on Nick at Night. I remember watching it with my dad.
But that was then, and this is now.
And over the next 3+ decades, the Monkees came together off and on for reunion tours, a TV special, even new records. In all, the band would release 14 studio albums, 11 live albums, and nearly 50 compilation records. Can believe that. Following the deaths of Davy Jones in 2012 and Peter Tork in 2019, Dolenz and Nesmith, they set off on a farewell tour in 2021. The tour concluded shortly before Nesmith's death later that year, leaving Dolenz as the last surviving Monkee. So looking back on it all, the Monkees have earned a well-deserved chapter in the story of rock and roll. I think they did. You think about it, they transcended the limitations that were placed on them at the outset, and they put together a really impressive career. It's included lots of hit singles and albums, a beloved TV series that we're still watching, and a pop culture presence that will never fade away. Some of the best songs of the 60s. And it all started with the breakthrough track that helped put them on the map. Last Train to Clarksville, the protest song that was hidden inside a sunshine pop ditty for the kids. You gotta love it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about the Monkees and Boys in Art and Last Train to Clarksville. What are your memories of the song? What are your memories of the Monkees? Are you a fan? Do you think that they were a boy band that was put together and got lucky? Or do you think that I think, the Monkees, it took me a little bit to like them. I actually liked them from the outset when I heard them, you know, in '86 when they kind of made their comeback. And then I was like too cool for them. And then I realized that they really did sing some of the best songs of the 60s. Anyway, just my take. Tell me yours. And if you like our content, subscribe. We'd love to have you. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth.